We are in week 4 of a 6-week marriage series. But before we jump into that, I just want to clarify something with all of you guys, and that is this. The goal of a marriage series, the goal of really every series we do here, every message we do here, is to help you grow, to take some next steps, to try to just, bring some things to your life that are a positive thing. But when it comes to marriage, there's really probably 2 ways that you go about doing that. One, you do something fun and exciting and positive together that builds positive memories and gets excitement and joy and happiness and all those different things. And you do that together, and that helps your marriage grow and get better. That's really hard to do on a Sunday morning, sitting in a church service. That's pretty difficult. And so the other option is what we've been doing, and that's where you take a look at marriages and go, okay, here's some common things that people struggle with. Here's some common roadblocks, here's some common things we run into, here's some common fight areas, common different things, and then we try to give you tools and resources and hopefully some biblical wisdom to equip you in those areas to try to help, again, grow your relationships even if you're not married, or grow your marriage, whatever it is. The problem with that is what happens is we spend 6 weeks looking at things that tend to be hardships. It's kind of a negative thing for 6 weeks in a row to an extent. And sometimes we can give the feeling up here that marriage is just like, you just kind of grit your teeth and bear it and get through it. You make the best of a lot of hard situations and try to figure out and compromise, and you meet in the middle and you both just kind of, make it work, and then hopefully you don't become a Christian divorce statistic. And that's what we're going for. That's almost the feeling that we give sometimes, and I just want to clarify. First off, that's not my experience with marriage. I'm not scoring brownie points here because my wife's not here because our littlest one is at home sick, but I love getting to be married. The experience that I've had with Katie and knowing that I get to spend the rest of my life with her and the things that she's been able to bring to my life, the changes that I didn't even know needed to happen, that have happened, that have made me closer to God and made me closer to her, I am incredibly grateful for that. And some of the best times I ever get to have in life are just hanging out with my spouse. And so for all of you to understand, yes, we are taking a look at hard things for 6 consecutive weeks. Our expectation of marriage and God's design of marriage is not just make the best of it, grit your teeth, and hopefully you'll survive. That is by no means what we're going for, and also by no means what I would consider God's idea for what he created in marriage. And I just want to make sure we're clear with that before we dive in. So with that, let me pray for the morning, and then we will dive into the content. Lord, I thank you for everybody that's here, for the fact that you give us a place to gather, to worship your name, to grow in you, to be able to connect with you, and hopefully connect more with each other, Lord. Lord, I thank you so much for who you are and how you love us and the plans and the designs that you have for our lives, Lord. I ask that you would use my words and use me this morning to help people grow closer to that design and to those plans, and that, Lord, because of this, we would get to experience you and your design for us even more fully, Lord. Amen. All right, so this morning, like I said, we are in week 4 of a 6-week series on marriage. And Scott created this series, and he laid out 6 different things. And Scott is on vacation right now, but he laid out 6 different things that we were going to cover and different topics we were going to hit on that are specific to marriage, or really even just relationships, hopefully. And week 4 just so happens to be fighting in conflict. And then I think completely coincidentally, Scott decided to go on vacation in week 4. Weird, right? It's amazing how that lined up, that he decided, all right, Josh, you get to speak on marriage, fights, and conflicts. But for me this morning, my wife's not here, so I don't feel right using examples from my relationship. So what I'm going to do is just use examples from my parents' relationship. And there was a day we were in the snow driving up a hill I'm just kidding, you should have seen my mom's face. She's sitting right there, and all of that was completely worth the response she just gave me. No, I'm not going to be talking about their issues. I will talk about my issues, don't worry. But this morning, as we talk about conflict and we talk about fighting, I actually had this whole message planned out because I've known about this for weeks, and I had this whole message planned out. And then in the middle of this past week, I essentially took that whole message and threw it out and created a different one. Because as I was studying for this and going over some verses, I came across a verse that just really, I think God used to convict me a lot to go, Josh, you need to adjust and do something different. And what I was going to be talking about was really just hopefully some really good advice and some wisdom on how to fight in your relationships and how to deal with conflict. And it was stuff like if you're going to be fighting with each other, you can't fight to try to win because you're not going to win. You have to fight towards resolution and all these different tips. And if you're interested in that and you're going, man, my relationship could really use that, please let me know after this service because I will give you that information. I will point you to those resources. And if there's a bunch of you that come up and you're like, hey, we really want that type of information, seriously, let me know. We'll even start a course. We'll do a class. We'll do something like that and we will dig into it. But this morning, that's not where we're going. And the reason we're not going there is because as I was creating that, I felt this conviction after reading this verse where I felt like God was just saying to me, Josh, what you're creating right now is good marriage content. And it's good advice and it's good wisdom, but not all good wisdom is godly wisdom. All godly wisdom in marriage is good wisdom, but not all good wisdom is godly wisdom. And really what you're looking at is just, it's content that could come out of a marriage book. It's content they could pick up on a YouTube video. It's content that just, it's good marriage advice. But we're at church, and my job is not just to give you good marriage advice, it's to give you godly marriage advice. And so because of that, this message, which was going to be a lot more lighthearted and have funny jokes and all these little twists and a little more lighthearted, has turned. And what we're going to be talking about this morning is not really the fights that Scott brought up last week, where it's about the socks on the ground and the little issues that kind of flare up in our relationship. What we're going to be diving into this morning is those issues in our relationship that tend to keep coming back. It's the ones where, if we're honest, they do more damage than the other ones. They cause more hurt than the other ones. There's something that tends to make them cyclical and something we come back to and something that really is, it's more of a thorn in our side as we go and it continues with us than just the, hey, there's some socks on the ground and that annoys me. And so this morning we're going to dive into that. But again, before we even get there, I have to build a foundation for us that we can agree upon. And I think the reason why some people get married, and this could be you, it may not be, but the whole point of marriage, the idea we go with into marriage of why we get married, for some people, the idea and the goal is just, I just want my life to get a little bit better and I want things to be easier. To try to buy a house in the Bay Area is ridiculous. So if I can marry a person and split that in half, that seems like it's easier and I'll be able to get a little more house, so that sounds better. Or, man, there's a lot of chores and a lot of things to do at this house, so if I could split that in half and we can do the divide and conquer, then that's going to make my life a little bit better, and hopefully this will just make things easier, and that's what marriage is supposed to do for me. If that's your hope of marriage, this message is not going to help you. I just want to be as transparent as possible. That's not where we're headed. The foundation that I need us to be able to agree upon is that the goal and the purpose of marriage is to make you more Christ-like. The reason why God brings a man and a woman together is so we can see things in each other and bring things out of each other that we never would have discovered and never would have brought out on our own. And in doing so, it refines us and makes us more godly and makes us more Christ-like. And hopefully then we become more impactful for Christ as we do that. But we have to agree that the purpose of marriage is to create in us a better reflection of Christ than just to make things easy, or this isn't going to work. So if we can agree on that, then here's why I think this is so incredibly significant. If you've been in a relationship even, if you're married and you've been married for a long time, you're immediately going to be like, oh, yes. Even if you've been in a relationship for a long time, though, the truth is, when you're in a long-term relationship or when you're in a marriage, your spouse, one, brings things out of you that no one else sees, and the other thing is, they see things in you that sometimes you don't even see in yourself. I know in my relationship, there's been times where I had issues going on or I had things going on that I couldn't even diagnose, I couldn't put together, I couldn't put words to, and then Katie sat me down and kind of talked me through it, and I was like, how'd you know? And the truth is, there is things inside of us that our spouses see and our spouses diagnose that we don't even get to see. I've heard people say that marriage is actually the truest reflection we get to see of ourselves. That sometimes what your spouse is doing is your spouse is actually holding up a mirror to you for you to see the truest version of yourself that you're going to get to see, and sometimes it's the version you don't even see. But God has brought us together to be able to get to that depths where we start to reveal parts of our soul and reveal things inside of us that we didn't even know were there or that maybe we didn't want to deal with. And so that's why this is so incredibly powerful. Because if we can realize in marriage, we get this gift of being able to see a glimpse that we don't even get to see anywhere else, and our spouses see part of us that we don't see anywhere else. If we can couple that and realize the goal of marriage is for God to use marriage as a tool in His hand to make us more like Him, then we have an incredible gift right there where God can take some of the things that are deep inside of us and actually align it to Him and what He's doing if we're willing to say, you know what, God? Maybe you're using my relationship as a way to draw me closer to you. But with that, it's not easy. Because all of us are wired the same way that when something comes up and there's a problem and there's an issue, none of us sit there and go, hey, let's think about all the ways that was my issue. None of us want to do that. What we do is we get defensive and we struggle and we go, you're blowing this out of proportion. You're making a bigger deal out of this. You're overreacting. That's not even true. That's not a correct representation. That's not, whatever it is, we decide we need to defend ourselves because we're feeling like we're attacked by it. So we push back and we go, no, that's not the issue. That can't be the issue. But for this to work, we have to have the humility to look at it and go, what if this is actually God using my marriage as a tool in His hands to reveal to me some things in my life that maybe He needs to bring into alignment to Himself. And it's not that my spouse is just crazy. It's not that they're a lazy slob. It's not that blah, 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 blah. It actually might be me. And that's not always the case. But what if we had the humility to question if it was? And here's the verse that brought all of this up. That's the foundation for all of this that changed the entire message. And it's James chapter 4, verse 1 to 3. And James comes out throwing punches, and this is what he says. He says, what is causing the quarrels and fights among you? Don't they come from the evil desires at war within you? You want what you don't have, so you scheme and kill to get it. You are jealous of what others have, but you can't get it, so you fight and wage war to take it away from them. Yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And even when you ask, you don't get it because your motives are all wrong. You want only what will give you pleasure. Right? I know, it messed me up last week too. It literally threw away an entire message for me. But James comes out and he says, what is actually causing the fights inside of you? It's your sinful desires, it's your selfishness, it's the things that you are still holding on to, it's you wanting to do life your way. That's what's causing your fights and your issues. And so my question for us is, are we willing to be humble enough to ask ourselves the question, what if the fights we keep coming back to are actually God using our marriage as a tool to highlight something in our life to say, child, you have not turned this over to me, and I need you to give this one up and give it to me. You're still doing this your way, and I need you to give it to me and make it come in alignment to me. What if it's actually not an issue with our spouse, and it's God using it to highlight something inside of us? Let me give you an example of this. A few years back, Katie and the kids and I all went on a trip to Idaho. It was our family vacation. And at the start of the vacation, things already started out a little bit rough because Katie has a different belief on what is supposed to be packed than what I have. And Katie would like to be packed and prepared for every situation, and I would like to bring less. And those are in direct opposition to one another. And at this time, our two little ones were young enough to where neither of them could carry any of their own stuff, and one of them still had to be carried or in a stroller. And for any of you that have traveled at that stage, oh man, it's fun. And so I'm going into the airport, and Katie and I have decided, okay, here's our strategy. You have to take care of both the kids in the stroller because that's a big enough job in and of itself. And so she's got that job. And then my job is I have to carry all the stuff. And I kid you not, I walked into the San Jose airport and I felt like I was a Sherpa ready to go up Everest. Like I was loaded down. So if you guys don't know, for car seats, they have these supposed to be helpful, and they're kind of helpful, but there's these backpacks that you put car seats into. And so we have two little ones, so we're taking two car seats. So I'm headed into the airport, and I have a backpack with a car seat in it right here, a backpack and a car seat in it right here, a backpack right here, a backpack right here, an extremely large bag right here, and on top of the extremely large bag, we have the pack and play, because that's a must. And then on this side, we have another large bag with another large bag on top of it, and I'm coming through the airport like this. I'm not kidding. If you get behind me in the TSA line and there is 42 people in this line and there's 3 people in this line and I'm the third person, you're like, nope, going over here. And you look at me like, man, have fun spending the night here, bud. Like, good luck. And so we go through the airport, and that's going to, and the thing that was ridiculous, to be honest with you guys, the thing causing the biggest fight was the backpack right here and the backpack right here. One was full of snacks and one was full of treats for the kids, and I was like, they're going to get treats on the plane, and we don't need to give them a bunch of toys and all that different stuff. It was the two smallest things. It made no difference. I don't know why we fought over it. But we fought over that, and that kind of got us in tension mode with each other. And then we got to Idaho, and then we got to the condo, and when we got to the condo, I decided I was going to go out shopping, so Katie gave me a list of things that she wanted, and I went out to go to the grocery store and go shopping. And when she gave me the list, I looked at the list and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, there's only 4 of us and 3 of you are small. What, are we feeding like an army? What's happening? And she started going back and forth with me, and we started going back and forth, and as ridiculous it is, by the end of that argument or fight, she was in tears and I was leaving the condo just crazy angry. And I'm driving down the street to the grocery store just thinking of all the different ways which I'm so justified, and it's so ridiculous that that was her request and how crazy it was and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden I felt like literally the Holy Spirit was just convicting me going, and this is what I felt like. I felt like God was literally saying to me, Josh, you are ruining your family vacation over groceries. You are going to ruin your entire family vacation over a couple of groceries. And then the truth is, I felt like it was a pause, and then God took it a step deeper, and he said, Josh, the issue is not with Katie and how much she wants you to pick up. The issue is that you struggle with finances. And any time you have to spend money and it's not your way, you freak out. And the truth of that situation, Josh, is you want to do money your way and with your wisdom and not surrender that to me and trust that I've got you covered and you need to fall into alignment with me. And the reason why I bring that up is because not every fight is one of those things where God's revealing it. Do you know why Katie and I had a fight about luggage? Because we're 2 different people and she sees it differently than I do, and we both think we're right. That's fine. Compromise and figure it out. But do you know why we fought over groceries? Because I have a financial struggle and I struggle to entrust that to God. And I wish I could say, and it's all better, but it's not. I still struggle with that today. And a lot of times when we fight over finances in our relationship, I have to take a look in the mirror and go, guess what, Josh? You're still struggling. You're still trying to do it your way, and you have not given it to God. And I have to ask the question, what if God is using this to reveal something in me that needs to come into alignment with Him? And my question for all of you is, what if some of your struggles are that? What if you struggle with intimacy because you have an area of porn in your life where you have not given it to God? What if there's lots of fights over being too critical or being too naggy or too whatever else because you struggle with fear and anxiety and actually trusting God? What if the reason why you come across as critical or harsh is because there's some unforgiveness and there's some bitterness that lives inside of you, and God is looking at that going, that needs to be turned over to me? And you guys know I could make this list a lot longer and we could continue on for a while of what if this is actually pointing to this. But the truth is, for that to be beneficial, we have to consider the possibility ourselves. There's a verse that I think really helps in this, and it's Ephesians 6:12. It says this, "For we are not fighting against flesh and blood, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places." And for me, it's a great reminder, I am not just fighting with Katie. Often I am fighting with things in my life where I'm still choosing selfishness, where I'm still choosing the ways of the world, and God is having the grace to show me, Josh, you have not surrendered this to me. And the truth of the situation is that for a lot of us, if I asked you, do you think God has something better for your relationship? If you could have God's ideal of what He created your relationship for, are you currently living it? Most of us would say no, and some of us would say no by a little, and some of us would say no by a long shot, but most of us would say no. And the truth of why we're not there for almost all of us is because what we want is we want God's results, but we want to do it our way. I want to live my life how I want to live my life, but I want God to give me His results. And God is sitting there going, child, that can't work like that. You can't do it your way and expect my results. You're going to have to take those ways and those struggles and those strongholds and those things that are holding you back, and you're going to have to surrender those to me. And when you surrender those to me, then you can start experiencing the relationship I have for you. But it goes in that order. To me, I think there's a great example of that with Jesus and Peter. You see Peter, when Jesus meets him at the shoreline, he's just a fisherman, and he's kind of hanging out. I'm going to fast forward this relationship like crazy all the way to the garden where Jesus is preparing to go be crucified. And he tells all of the guys, he goes, hey, you're going to leave me. And Peter goes, Jesus, I am never going to leave you. If every one of these guys abandons you, I'm not going to abandon you. And Jesus, even if it costs me my life, I will not leave you. And Jesus looks at him and he goes, Peter, before the rooster crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. And it happens. And Peter goes away and he weeps bitterly over those struggles, but I think what we see in that is Jesus is refining Peter to make him more the person that he needs him to be. And once Jesus is resurrected, he comes back to Peter and he begins to restore that relationship. And all of a sudden you pick up Peter in Acts chapter 2, and it says Peter is preaching to the crowds, and over 3,000 people come to follow Christ because of him that day. And the reason why I bring that up, and this is speculation, I will give you that, but I think it's a fair speculation. I would say that if you went to Peter on the shoreline as a fisherman and said, hey, Peter, if I could give you something to just make life better, what could I give you? He would probably say, I want to catch more fish. I want to make a little bit more money. I want to enhance my life the way that it is right now. I just want a little better addition. And I think Jesus was looking at him going, Peter, I've gotten something so much better for you. Peter, I have something that you can't even imagine, but before you get there, we need to take some things and make it align to me. There's some things in you that need to get worked on, and then you're going to start living the life that I have for you. And Peter goes through that process, and then later we see him, and there's thousands of people coming to follow because of him. And the reason I tell that story is I think that's where a lot of us are in our marriages today here. You walked into this series and you said, if I were to ask you, what can I do for your marriage, or if we could make your marriage better, what would it be? You would probably just say something along the lines of, I just don't want us to get a divorce. I just want us to be able to have a conversation like we used to. I want to be able to walk into the room and not have it feel so cold. I want us to be able to actually deal with issues that come up. I want us to be able to have intimacy again. I want to go out on dates. I just want to laugh. I want to enjoy them again. I just want to not live like roommates. And we have these expectations, and I feel like Jesus is sitting there going, child, I have so much more for you. All you want is more fish. I have something so much greater than more fish for you. But before we can get your relationship there, there's some things we need to take care of. You can't keep doing life your way and expecting to have my results. So let me use your marriage as a tool in my hand to point out the things inside of you that I need you to bring into alignment to me. And once you bring those into alignment, then I can start to show you the marriage and the life and the relationship I actually have in store for you. Because it is so much greater than your addition of what your hopes are. But we can't get there until we work through some of these things. So as we close out, I want to ask some things of you guys. And the first one is this. The next time you have a significant fight, one of those struggles that keeps coming back, have the humility to stop. And instead of getting defensive, and instead of blaming, and instead of attacking back, ask yourself the question, God, are you using this to show me something in my life? God, are you trying to reveal something to me that maybe I've been blind to that I need to turn over to you? And then if you really want to take your relationship to that next level, here's what I would ask you to do. Tell your spouse. Tell them what you feel like God is calling you to work on. If you want to take it to the really, really next level, ask them to help you. You want to see your relationship grow? Ask your spouse to come together with you as a team to help you become a more godly person. You'll see growth like you've never had before. But the last thing I need to say is this. Please hear me on this one. Spouses, if your spouse comes to you, do it with humility and receive that with humility. Please, please, please do not respond with, yeah, I've seen that for a really long time. Oh, you're just coming to realize that's been going on in your life? Remember the verse. Don't go get the speck in their eye until you've taken care of the plank in your own. And the other thing, this is in no way intended to be a tool in your hand to go convict your spouse. I'm not asking you to tell them their problems. I'm not asking you to use that. This is for you to take a look inside of your spouse. And unless your spouse specifically asks you to reveal some things or to speak to them about that, this is not for you to tell them where you think they're falling short. I guarantee you that won't go well. Allow this to be a time of reflection of yourself, and when you get into those struggles, to take time and to humbly ask God, God, are you revealing something in me that's not in line with you? Because if I can bring that into alignment with you, then we can start to step into the relationship that you actually have for us that is so much greater than I ever would have imagined on my own. Let me pray. Father, I thank you for every single person in this room. And I thank you for using relationships, Lord, to highlight in us the things that we're still doing our way. Lord, I ask that you would help us to be wise enough and humble enough to see things from your perspective instead of ours, Lord. Teach us not to immediately be defensive and to try to jump back at the things that keep coming up, Lord. Lord, for us to have the humility to ask the question, Lord, are you using this fight and this conflict to show me something in myself that I need to bring into alignment with you? And Father, more than everything, I ask that you would help every single one of us to live the relationships and the lives that you have for us, Lord. Not for us just to get a few more fish, but for us to actually experience the greatness of what you have in store for us. The things that only you can come up with, Lord. Father, I thank you for our love for every single one of us, and ask that you would bless these relationships, Lord. Amen.